matinee, and yeah, I watched these kind of films. There were really no children films, so to me it was very obvious that film is something big, because it was so much different from what I saw, outside of the cinema. And when in the 80s, everybody from my friends were doing bands, playing in punk rock or in art and noise bands, I decided, okay, I'm very much into movies, so maybe I should do movies. So I just got a Super 8 camera and started. Not really movie business, but but movies at last, and real, film,
Yeah, do-it-yourself ethic.
Yes, that was, I mean, during the late 70s and early 80s, that was the thing to do, do something on your own, don't ask anybody, and during that period of time, we had a very strict censorship when it came to horror movies in Germany. And so I was pretty much angry about that. So my films were also kind of a protest against this censorship movement. So when I wanted to see a horror movie uncut, I had to go to the Netherlands or to other countries to get VHS tapes, stuff like this. So it was always, something precious to me. And the strange thing that happened is, listening to strange early industrial bands in Berlin, like Throbbing Gristle or SPK from Australia, they screened films when they did concerts. So to me, strong images and noisy industrial music was always a combination I had in mind. And the early films I did, I think, have a lot of inspiration from all the concerts I saw back then and all the footage. I remember SPK playing in Berlin at this famous club SO36, and they screened Super 8 footage they took in a morgue or somewhere, or like in a hospital, because one of the members was living in a mental institution, I think, or something like this, and they had you could see that they took like a face or a head and a dick from dead people, like specimens. They took them out of glasses and performed hideous things with them in front of the camera. And I thought, I mean, that's so sick. I still think.
You just have to make necromantic on them.
Yeah, but that's the stuff that was normal during that time when the idea of necromantic came around, I think.
So which one of these characters did you feel that or is the most you of all that you've done? Which can you?
What do you mean characters?
Which one of these is like the most like whole or
the characters
full,
in the films?
Yeah, who is
closest to you?
I would think that you deal with these kind of topics if you are afraid of something. At least that's how I dealt with it. I read a book about Edward Gein, an American, like serial killer book, and I read a true crime book about Dennis Nielsen, a British serial killer, and these were the parts that really frightened me, and I thought, okay, that's really strange that someone could, I don't know if you're familiar with Dennis Nielsen. He was like a gay...
Yeah, killed and stuffed people in the fridge.
Yes, kind of.
Most of them do.
Yeah, I mean, but what he was trying to do he had lovers, male lovers. He was gay. He had male lovers at his home. He took them from pubs in London, and he didn't want them to leave. So the only solution for him was that he killed them. And so I think being, thinking about necrophilia and thinking about the case of Edward Gein, which is the main inspiration for Psycho, that these necrophilia themes, or the people who are into necrophilia, they are not really into necrophilia. It's an act of desperation because they don't know how to deal
With Jeffrey Dahmer.
with living people. Yeah.
The Joker story with Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes. So I think that's. So if you ask me who I feel attached to in my stories, I really don't feel attached to these characters a lot because I was just trying to get to get more into it to understand what they were doing, and to me it's very obvious. Sometimes it's very pragmatic, you know. I don't want this guy to leave, so I cut his head off, and then he will stay for another night, or 2, or 3. But then I have to get rid of him, so that's another problem.
So now we have 2 here that don't want you to leave, so how do you feel about that consequence?
The movies are so old, nobody really believes them anymore. I mean, to me, that's one of the things that surprised me a lot, that people take a film like Necromantic serious, because I made this film on Super 8 with some of my friends, and there is no actor in it, we had no script really. So to me it's strange that people take these things so seriously, because when I watch these movies I see all the flaws, all the stuff that didn't work out, you know. I see all the screws of the corpse.
Life is full of flaws.
Yes.
When searching for something that you don't know what is, and you come across these things that's growing up, it's, you know, then you can sit in here. You know? Now here's a guy who, I understand this guy, you know, he's eating people, so.
Yeah.
Your movies like Necromantic, you were probably one of the other people. I mean, you had the right-wing people and you had the Rotterdam-faction, and you were the other guy that got raided by the police. I mean, to get hold of your movies because they've been banned. How many countries are these movies banned in? I think that it's still banned in Norway, right?
I
So
hope
this
not.
is a
I mean, I remember a screening in Oslo where we were planning to screen Necromantic and Todo, I think. And the police raided the place and wanted to get hold of my precious film prints. So for some reason I was able to convince them that it was only going to be a screening of a VHS tape. So we gave them a VHS tape. Because these film prints were precious because I paid for them, you know. And
they are your babies, they cannot leave.
yeah, the funny thing was that I asked, you know, naive as I am, I asked one of the police guys what the problem is, and he told me that necrophilia is against the law in Norway, and strangely enough, necrophilia is not against the law in Germany, because nobody ever thought of it, I think. But
that's not so.
I asked the police guy, so you know, I saw a movie yesterday on Norwegian TV where someone was killed. I think it's against the law to kill someone, so why was this film on? Well,
you should have filmed that.
Yeah, he just left. Yeah, but I don't know in how many countries my movies are banned, but because I'm on another track now. Now I'm happy about the few countries where the movies are not banned, and that I get a 18 certification for Necromantic and Necromantic 2 for Great Britain. That in the US the films are released on Blu-ray in big editions, and they have the ability to just release them unrated. And in Germany we can release them because we went to court back then, and my films are called art now, so they are not supposed to touch them anymore.
Take it as a compliment.
So it's 3 countries that the film is not banned. But I think the whole concept of censorship doesn't make any sense anymore in the digital age. Who cares about censorship? I mean, we are sitting here. There will be a screening of Necromantic and Todo, and we are asking ourselves, is this film banned? We don't care anymore, because it will. If you don't see it here, you can watch it on YouTube.
What do you think about the Serbian movie? Have you seen that?
I've never seen that because I never really felt the need to.
But you're happy now. That's pretty scary, actually.
Well, I was always happy. You know, the fact that
Are we not fighting anything anymore?
I'm more of a positive guy. doesn't have anything to do with the films I did, because I was always you have the same thing in the US with when Black Flag and these American bands, these straight edge punk rock, it wasn't really something I understood in the first place. And when I saw Black Flag for the first time in Berlin, Henry Rollins had long hair, and I thought, well, that's against the law, against the punk rock law.
Fuck the law.
And he was not drinking, so I thought maybe there's something else to it. It's more of a. I always felt I'm a happy person because I get the stuff out of my system. I can still read or see horror movies, but it doesn't really give me a lot of entertainment or excitement when I see grossed out movies. To me, these kind of movies were important as a protest in the 80s, but now, Evil Dead remake distributed by Sony.
I remember that movie was that was a bit funny with Evil Dead. That was scary as fuck.
Yeah.
With
But now
the basement girl. I was like.
But now it's everything is accessible, and I think when you get older, you also don't feel the need to do the same thing again and again. And after.
So you have been.
I'm still happy if I see a remake of Evil Dead, and I think, well, finally this film finally gets some more cash. But I'm also very fond of Spider-Man. He did a very good job on Spider-Man, So I can enjoy both, and to me it's important that films or music or art in general is consequent in a way, and that it's not wishy-washy, not something that tries to be in the mainstream. That was the same with German Angst when we just did German Angst, this episodic movie. 3 directors, and we only took private money to make this film, just because we didn't want to apply for any funding and stuff like this. But yeah, it's still, I found out that it's still the same mess distribution-wise when you do movies like this, when you do movies that take no prisoners, but it was more like of a favor to do one episode of this movie to Andreas Marschall, to one of the directors who had the idea for German Angst. He was the guy who painted the poster for Necromantic in '87 for me, and I think he got about $300 for that back then. So last year he asked me a favor to do an episode for the anthology movie he's planning, and this was payback time, I think.
But we're about to watch Todo, and there's this is like it's a week of suicides. It's a lot of short movies, right? Collection. And musical-wise, you were speaking earlier about SPK, Throbbing Gristle, very heavy industrial music and quite harsh films. But the soundtrack to Todo's King is something
different,
something else.
But the soundtrack of Todo's King is pretty much like the soundtrack of Necromantic, I think. That's basically the concept. It's the same guys. And the idea for Necromantic was, because my first impulse, of course, was to do like heavy music on Necromantic. But then I thought, if this film doesn't have any good characters, no chain-smoking police guy who wants to hunt down the necrophile, you only have these so-called bad guys as protagonists. So if this movie is being told from these people's point of view, then of course they think what they do is something nice. They are in love with the dead. They go to bed with death. And so why not take the title very seriously and make a romantic movie, So we need romantic music. And I think that was that was one of the best ideas for Necromantic to just go the romantic way, because nobody really thought of it. And even if the special effects are cheap, the thought of doing this without any judgment, a story about necrophilia, that was the thought that really provoked the people back then.
So it's a love triangle with very nice music. It's a love story with a dead guy.
Yes.
Which actually, and the living guy gets dumped for the dead guy.
Yeah, that's the only joke in the movie. the only joke that was in the script there.
So how about, would you like to say something special about Todo's King? No. I mean, Per, you obviously, you've seen it a few times. Do you have any...
Yeah,
He looks devastated. What
happened? You just said everything I was going to ask about. I'm trying
You're frustrated because I'm a happy guy.
I think that was very scary actually, but I thought I would make sort of a way into get to reveal something, but
I've done so many interviews.
So you've done.
No, but the thing is, I think with Todo's King, you know what? But when I talk about these movies, I tend to be very pragmatic, and that spoils a lot of stuff. But to me, when I wrote Der Todeskind, to me it was important that I have these little tiny bits, these short films, as you said, because I was so exhausted from Necromantic, because Necromantic took like 2 years to complete, and it was so exhausting for me to get everybody back on every weekend. The film was only shot on weekends, and especially in the 80s it was even very hard to convince the actors not to change the hair color and the hairdo for over a period of 2 years, you know. So I was trying to make sure that this film would be more easy, so I did short episodes I could shoot on one weekend, and that's where the structure of the week was born. So very often these ideas that seem to be very clever are made by simple pragmatic facts. I didn't want to shoot a long movie. I only wanted to shoot some more short films to have more freedom and to try some stuff out. And when Der Todeskind came out, the people were not very happy with it because it was so much different from Necromantic. And I mean, when Janneke told me that so many people over here watched these films back then, and that it was so important, that really didn't came over to me, you know. It was more like, okay, we did this film, and if we sold, I mean, we did our own distribution company in Germany to make sure that the films would be released uncut, and if we sold like 50 Necromantics, we sold like 5 Todeskind. So Todeskind is really a difficult movie to sell, I think. It's not an exploitation movie. I mean, a lot of people are kind of disappointed when they see Necromantic that it doesn't really fit to the poster, and Todeskind is a different poster already. So it was very hard to sell, and I think the reputation it had built up over the years is something I like, of course, because finally the film gets
recognition.
Yeah, some recognition, and but to me still it's hard to watch.
These are also like building blocks for if you're not fitting in anywhere and you're just seeking up or jumping over extreme things. This will be like checkpoints to see if someone is extreme as you are, you know. So then you know they're real.
Would you think that Todeskind is an extreme movie? Yeah.
But
in what
in
way?
A positive way.
Yeah.
In a happy way.
Yeah. I was afraid that this could be
important, like important that someone is shaking things, you know.
But I was always afraid that this movie could be taken wrongly as a guide to how to get rid of your life. That's why I made this rotting corpse, which also, of course, I'm not very satisfied with. But the version you're going to watch now is like a HD version that came out. So it's like a new Blu-ray that came out in Germany last week, and it's the first time you see more maggots on these decaying.
Cool.
More maggots.
Good.
The frustrating thing back then was that when you screened the Todesking on 60mm, it really looked shitty and the music sounded like this. Because it was a magnetic track and
It's
so.
great stuff, you know.
Yeah. But to see it today in this kind of great shape is in a way very satisfying to me.
We would get like a copy from a guy who had a VHS copy from his uncle. So
Yeah.
it's passed down.
I mean, I had the same experience when I watched new movies back in the 80s. I think I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 for the first time, and I couldn't really see anything. But the bad
But it's
soundtrack,
great.
yeah, in a way it's great, but I don't want to go back there. It's just frustrating.
Last question, that you surely must have one crazy devoted fan story. Do you ever receive anything or some sort of like memory or something that
I met this guy on an airport and he showed me his Todesking. That was strange because that was at a time where I thought, well, the Todesking was only released on VHS somewhere and on DVD and really. So that's it's in a way
you have a
it's
fan?
in a way it's frightening, but it's also nice, of course.
And still, like flowers.
Yeah, it's only a T-shirt, but
Yeah, it's a really good
it's
movie.
a tattoo convention. You know that.
I actually found out about the movie because of Bursum, actually, because one of the songs on the self-titled album called "The Crying Orc" actually sounds really similar to the main theme soundtrack from the Todesking. And I was watching comments on YouTube and they were like saying, "Oh, it sounds really similar to Jörg Buttgereit's The Todesking movie," and I was like, "Oh, I should check it out." And I checked out the movie and it was really good. And I also checked out Necromantic 1 and 2. So yeah, that's how I found it, and really good movies. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's still hard to imagine how these films work today because to me they have nothing to do with today.
I freaked out a friend of mine because I was showing him Necromantic 1 and he really likes cats. And then came the scene when he smashed the cat in the wall
But
and
it's only a movie.
yes.
But another frightening or strange thing to answer another question is that a lot of people who write me on Facebook or so, they tell me that Necromantic was the first movie they showed to a girlfriend or to a wife. Yeah, and I mean, a friend of mine did the same, and it went all wrong. But no, he married her actually.
Oh.
In the end, he has 2 kids now, so it also worked out. But she was running out of the cinema, and I was present, so it was really depressing for me. But still, the relationship worked out. But a lot of people tell me that they use Necromantic as the first date movie, and a lot of positive relationships came out of it. So it's not a
And no one's
bad
dead yet.
movie. No, it's like a date movie now.
Okay, not a dead movie, but a date movie.
A date movie.
Anyone got some questions more, or should we start the film?
Try Necrophilia?
No, I just tried very hardly to explain that I deal with stuff in my films that I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
So, of course not.
You got to live them out on the big screen.
Did you ever consider making Necromantic 3?
I mean, when back then in the 90s, when it would have made sense, we had some ideas, but we could never really make ourselves. We were always just doing fun about the idea of a Necromantic 3, because for me it was also kind of a joke to do Necromantic 2. And if you watch Necromantic 2, you can see that I'm teasing the horror audience by doing a very romantic, very slow movie with only little bits of violence. And of course, there are a lot of questions about Necromantic 3 or something, but as I just told you, to me it makes sense in the way that these films were important when there was strict censorship laws in Germany, where there was kind of a revolution with splatter movies. And today everything is possible. So who do you want to scare with Necromantic 3? So you could only do it as a joke or as like
so you are a rebel.
Well, but
It's sadistical too, actually.
if you look at German Angst tomorrow, I think at 5, the first episode I did is very close to Schramm, so the film I did in 1993. So I still can find ways to do stuff, I think, that are in these spirit, but I very much do it on the stage now, in Germany. I did a stage version of Nosferatu, which is going to play today for the last time after over 1 year in Dortmund. And I'm sitting here because I didn't know that this would be the last show today. But I watched it 3 weeks ago and it turned out better. So what I do now is I do kind of the same things. I mean, I did a stage play on Edward Gein, on the whole Necrophilia thing with Slayer music, all this kind of stuff. But on a stage in front of people who are not, they don't know who Ed Gein was. So I'm getting more into fields where I could do more harm. Because on the screen is dirty already, but the stage is really different. And it pays much better, because in Germany it's a very bad idea to do horror movies.
You should do it on stage in Norway now.
But it will be all in German, But you know what would be easy to do this Nosferatu play, because Nosferatu, this early German movie from 1922, is a silent movie. So in my stage version, the actors who really look like the old actors back in the 20s, they start to move and act like real silent movie actors, and when they open the mouth, it goes all black, and then you have title cards in the back. And we could just translate those in Norwegian, and I don't have any more work to do.
Me and a friend of mine made a joke when we watched Nosferatu last year that I think the woman or something in the movie is actually more creepy than the vampire, because she always has this really shocking look all the time on her face, like.
She has a very good line. I think her first line, it's not a line, it's a title card, is when her husband, Hutter, he's bringing her flowers. And he gives them to her and she says, "You killed him, you killed them, you are so cruel." And she goes away, like this. So I really love that scene. That's so gothic, but it was made in 1922. That's the whole concept of necromantic, right? So I was too late anyway.
We're still going back to like keeping the spirit of Mr. Gein alive, and but any of these movies have affected you in any way that you sort of become obsessed by it and weakened by it, almost destroyed by it? Or I was hoping you would say, when I asked you about the characters, I hoped you would say Schramm. But yeah, has anything, like, are you not touching anything anymore, that what you've done? Like, is there some subject that, like, oh, fuck this?
No, I mean I did this Edward Gein stage play, which is pretty much the same starting point I had when I did Necromantic, but I'm always trying to make life more difficult for me, So I did try to do it on a stage for people who are not used to deal with these kind of subjects.
So the next step is naturally to do it yourself, then? To live out this, or?
No, because I mean,
saw that
what's the big deal? I don't think that people who had sex with dead people, they would always prefer the living thing. They only do it out of lack of dealing with real people, of dealing with the whole concept is very sad, I think. So
could you relate to that?
I can relate to the. I can relate. I know you're trying desperately, but
I will get you now.
no, I think the concept.
Stop.
Yeah, the concept I see behind Edward Dean is innocence, and this innocence is something that interests me. He was too innocent to see what he was doing, and because he was like a child, and he was trying to be his mother, and he was not into necrophilia. I think he was worse. I've just seen a film in Copenhagen that had a nice necrophilia scene in it. The Corpse of Anna Fritz, I think it's called. It's a Spanish movie. It's a first-time movie, and it starts like Necromantic 3, if you will, but then it's like a thriller. So yeah, don't tell the director because he's a nice guy that I only think the first 10 minutes of his movie. No, but
There's a clip on YouTube. 10 minutes.
I would think that
it's a nice movie, but it has a very intense necrophilia scene in it. Not with a fake corpse, but with a real woman. But she wakes up again while this happens, and it's a very, very, very effective scene. And it's a first-time movie. I think the solution for movies like Necromantic is that you have to be young, that you have to be a first-timer, and you have to have more questions than answers. Maybe I have too many questions to do Necromantic 3, or too many answers. This is going.
I would think that if Necromantic 3 would happen, it would like begin after that cliffhanger ending in Necromantic 2, when the main character, she goes to the hospital and she finds out she is pregnant. Maybe her son or daughter, 20, 30 years in the future, becomes just like her.
A comic outline for a third part of Necromantic, which is called Son of Necromantic, which is a joke on the old Frankenstein movies, because the first one was Frankenstein, Frankenstein's Braut, and Son of Frankenstein. So there is this concept of, there was one of these ideas that the kid of Monica is also trying to work as a gravedigger, and Monica gets very concerned.
She should be happy.
So, there are all kinds of ideas you could do with this, but I'm not sure if it's really my job to do this. Maybe I can write it, or if Michael Bay phones me, to do a remake like he did with Texas Chainsaw, I would get the money and don't shoot the movie on my own.
But then you would have to add some explosive scenes or something.
Yes, and some
make it flashy.
Corpses.